Good morning, everyone. I'm going to call to order a committee of conference for House Bill 458. Now, this is a bill that was a significant change from the original House Bill 458. That was a bill that was designed to do something completely different, but a Senate bill had superseded it. So the House amended House Bill 458 to reestablish a commission to study the assessing of power generation. This is a commission that was established at least a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. It had done some work, but it didn't finish the work that they were trying to accomplish. So they asked us to, and then the commission expired. So they asked us to reestablish the commission so that they could finish their work. So that's what the substance of the bill did. And when we sent the bill to the Senate, after it passed the House, the Senate decided to make a change, an amendment, to solve one problem. And here's the problem. Right now, power generators, power plant owners, have to face multiple points of assessment so that when they're trying to figure out what their tax assessment is going to be, they have to talk to the DRA, and then they have to talk to one or more private assessors, usually hired by a municipality. And this creates a lot of confusion, and it also leads to a lot of lawsuits, which ends up costing everybody more money. So the Senate changed the language in the bill to try to eliminate this multiple points of assessment and create just a single point of assessment for a power generation plant to deal with. And the Board of Assessment came to me and said they preferred the House language over the Senate language. But looking at the House language and comparing it to the Senate language, it seems to me that the original House language is quite vague and confusing. So we think we would be willing to go along with the Senate amendment with a slight change. The current Senate amendment for Section D reads, recommend a solution for power generation assets to face a single point of assessment commensurate with market-based commercial property. We feel if we changed the 3 words at the beginning of that sentence, recommend a solution, to create recommendations, that would allow the commission to analyze all different methodologies for coming up with an assessment, and then come up with a recommendation or possibly more recommendations to put together a single point of assessment. So that's the proposal I think we would like to ask the Senate to consider. And I would open the floor to other members of the committee to discuss this further. Representative McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Were you also considering in that amended language that you just mentioned, adding the single point language to that? Because you didn't mention that. You mentioned changing the sentence at the beginning to say create recommendations.
So what I'm recommending is that we go to the Senate. If you look at the
and
side by side.
And change the first 3 words.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Just change the first 3 words because that preserves the language about a single point
Yeah.
of assessment.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Further discussion.
Oh, good. Sounds good. Good.
Okay, the Senate agrees with this recommendation that we change those 3 words to the 2 words create recommendations. And the House members, I believe we agree to that as well. Okay, I think we're done. It's only 9:10.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, let's keep it going.
Let's hope the next 2 go as quickly.
And since we have 2 at 1 to 9:30, we'll get back up here shortly after 9:30.
Okay. All right.
for the 16th.
All right. With that, I'm going to adjourn this committee of conference and thank all members for your participation. Thank you. Call to order the Committee of Conference on House Bill 1623. For the House, we have Representatives Harrington, Bernardi, and Thomas, and myself, of course. And for the Senate, we have Senate ENR Chairman, Senator Kevin Abard, Senator David Waters, and joining us shortly will be Senator Howard Pearl, I believe.
Yeah,
He is at another committee of conference
he's
that was,
working on lithium batteries, Mr. Chairman.
was scheduled at the same time.
Yeah.
So we're here to discuss the changes made by the Senate to House Bill 1623. The Senate removed quite a bit of the language that was in the original bill, essentially all of the language down to section 2. The language that involved 4 findings and the language that involved changes to RSA 378:37, which is the New Hampshire state energy policy. The Senate left intact the section of the bill that discussed loss of in-state electrical generation and provided a remedy about what to do with that. So I'm here this morning on behalf of the House because the House position was the entire bill to advocate for adding some new language to the Senate's version of the bill. I recognize that the original bill's complete replacement of RSA 378:37 was probably too much to ask. So this amended version that I'm offering this morning retains all of the original language from 378:37. Doesn't change a single letter of the existing language of that portion of the statute. All it does is add some additional language to that portion of the statute to place an emphasis on some important concepts. The major concepts that it tries to enshrine in statute are reliability and low consumer prices and price stability. When I talk to my constituents, they complain a little bit about the price of electricity, but the thing they complain the most about is its reliability. Why does it take so long for the power company to get my power back on when it goes off, when a storm passes through? Why do I have power outages every week, et cetera, et cetera? That's the single biggest complaint that I hear when I talk to my constituents about electricity. So I think it's important for us to emphasize in state energy policy that reliability is a key component of everything we do. And that's why the 4 of us on the House side have worked together to put together this amendment proposal. And I would like to hear from other members of the Committee of Conference to get your reaction to this proposal. Representative Harrington.
Yeah, just to reemphasize what the chairman just said, I think that, it sounds kind of silly, but during a power outage, I've had people say, I'll rent your generator. I don't care what it costs, because reliability is such an important thing. My daughter, who has her own business, used to live in California, and she would lose the power in the summertime on a semi-regular basis, which caused her to move out of California. She just couldn't tolerate having that loss. And as we go forward, reliability is going to be a much, much bigger issue. And we need to look at the big picture on this. We've seen a lot of proposals for new generation, but very few of them come online. In the last year, I think we've seen 5 offshore wind projects canceled from New Jersey through New England. One in New Jersey just paid a $120 million fine rather than build to their contract that they signed. One in Massachusetts paid a $65 million fine. So reliability is going to be the key issue. People bitch about, my French, but that's what they do, about cost. But when it comes down to it, if they don't have electricity, they're willing to pay double the price to get it back. So we got to start with reliability. That's the most important thing.
Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I will echo with the last 2 speakers' sentiments and add that for my constituents in Londonderry, yes, reliability is paramount, and I would say extremely important to our businesses. But Londonderry has a very high percentage of elderly and families on fixed incomes, and price and price stability are paramount to them as well. So I think it's very important that we set up a policy where, yes, reliability is first, always has to be. You have to have reliable power no matter what you do. But also pricing and price stability is very important, particularly for our elderly and people on fixed incomes. They just, with inflation going on right now, they just can't afford more price hikes. And I think we need to be very sensitive to that. And I think the state needs to follow a policy that follows the best interests of these constituents.
Representative Bernardi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll third the motion. The key language you have in here in this particular amendment is affordability, reliability, and price stability. Those are key elements to ensure that we address in energy policy. And they hit all the points of our constituents. They want the prices known, and they want that electricity reliable, and they want it reasonable in cost.
Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have passed House Bill 1431 on transmission planning, and we have created a grid modernization working group a couple of years ago. And I think that we have good systems in place to deal with reliability of transmission and distribution. And I think that the Senate would like to stay with the Senate position on the bill and hope that the House would accede to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I concur with.
Any further discussion?
I concur with Senator Waters.
Okay, so is it the Senate's position that they will not consider this amendment language?
That is the Senate's position.
There's no room for discussion, no room for
we do like what you
modifications to
we
this
like,
language?
We do like what is the remainder of the bill, though, and we feel that that sovereignty piece is very, very important, and we definitely would embrace that wholeheartedly. But at this time, I think any changes were pretty much of one mind not to amend it.
Could you help us understand what about this language you don't like, either of you?
Well, I think there is a bit of vagary here with this, limited to the economic advantages. It's not very specific, and I just feel it's too vague at this point, and I think what we have right now, I haven't heard anything about reliability from my consumers and from my constituents at this price. Definitely prices are a concern, but allowing more renewable energies projects that we're working on right now, I think is trying to address that. But at this point, I think just that it's kind of vague. So, I mean, that's where I stand with this.
Senator Waters?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So I agree with the chair. And I also would just say in the big picture, we have gotten just an enormous amount done on energy policy over the last couple of years. And I think that we're ending up in a very good place with what the Senate did to to House Bill 1623. And as I said, I think that there certainly will be things to continue discussing in subsequent sessions, but it is our hope that because there is, as the chairman said, some substance that's important to the version of House Bill 1623 that the Senate passed, and we would hope that the House for this year could live with letting that be what we do, and conversations would continue.
So Senator Avard, you mentioned some what you consider to be vague language about economically advantage one technology over another. Would it change your opinion of this suggested language if the phrase that starts on line 3 with the words "to limit" and ends on line 5 with specific policy goal, if that phrase was struck, would the rest of the language be acceptable to either of you?
I think at this point, we're not in the disposition of changing anything.
So you won't even consider that?
No, sir. But thank you for asking.
All right. Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to be clear, Senators, could you help me understand a little bit more why you have a reservation on wanting people's energy to be reliable and lower cost and to be stable? I don't, can you help me understand why that phrase seems to be offensive to the Senate?
I'd be glad to just say that.
Senator Waters?
I think we'd be very happy to continue discussions next session. And I don't think that our objection to this at this point in time should be assumed to have any principle or of what the representative has just suggested. So as I said, I hope that the House can understand the Senate's position of sticking with its version, and that's where we're at. And so that's the decision, I think, is up to the House, is what you want to do.
Senator Avard?
Yeah, I have no objections to lowering energy costs and producing reliability. I think the key part of this bill that I'm very keen on passing is the protection of lawfare. And I think and I applaud you for that part of this bill. And I think that at this point, that is one key element of this bill that will help lower the costs and keep reliability there, because people will not be engaged in endless lawsuits. And I think that is a good part of this bill, and I support it wholeheartedly. So I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. So it's not like, we're definitely for lower prices. We're definitely for reliability. So to not agree with that part of the bill does not mean that we are against it. It just means that this is the part of the bill that we support wholeheartedly.
Okay, anybody else have anything to add? Representative Bernardi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I do not understand that statement. I understand the lawfare section of the bill makes perfect sense, but I don't understand why making a public policy statement that we want energy reliability, price affordability, and price stability is not good for New Hampshire. It just makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever.
Further comments? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call for a 5-minute break. And I'm going to ask the House members to meet me in this office right over here for a quick discussion. like to resume this committee of conference on House Bill 1623. House conferees have made a decision about what we would like to do. And I recognize Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, although I do think it's extremely important that the state make a statement on the policy of energy reliability, looking for the low cost and to protect price stability, it does trouble me that we can't seem to get that language into this bill. However, the second part of this bill is also very important, and it does protect or helps to protect our generators and sends a strong message to others outside of us, of the state here, that that we want to protect our power generators, the ones that we have. So I believe it's worth keeping this bill with the Senate's position, and that I expect that there will be new legislation and discussions coming forward next year to make this bill even better, make this statute even better. So with that, I somewhat reluctantly, but I believe that this is a step in the right direction, and I will be supporting the Senate amendment.
Representative Harrington.
Yeah, without repeating everything that Representative Thomas just said, I am in complete agreement with him. I think sometimes you got to look at it and say, well, a step in the right direction is better than no step at all. Though I think the original bill was better, I'm willing to go along with this with the idea that if I am reelected, this discussion will be back again next year.
Representative Bernardi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I would concur. Half a loaf here is better than no loaf at all. It's the lawfare provisions are very important, particularly with respect to our discussions in the greater New England area. But it's also important for us in the future to strive for a policy that enshrines reliability, stability, and affordability.
Thank you. So, as you probably have surmised, the House position is going to be that we will accede to the Senate changes to this bill. Do you have anything to add?
Thank you.
Okay, so we are done, and I will make sure that this information gets transmitted to OLS and the House Clerk. Thank you all, and we'll see you again at 10:30 for the next Committee of Conference. the Committee of Conference on House Bill 1600. Representing the House this morning is Representative Corman, Representative McGee, Representative Thomas, and myself, Representative Michael Vose. Representing the Senate is Senator Howard Pearl, Senator David Waters, and I'm told that Senator Kevin Abard will be joining us in a few minutes, or as soon as he can get away. So we're here this morning to discuss House Bill 1600, an act relative to participation in net energy metering. The bill that the House sent to the Senate was a two-section bill that basically made municipal hosts who want to participate in community aggregation to be a member of the community aggregation. The Senate, after listening to some concerns from the Department of Energy and some others, decided to change the bill, to remove that section of the bill and to change it into a study committee, a committee that shall examine legislative options regarding regulation of aggregation of electric customers by municipalities and counties, including treatment of municipal hosts pursuant to RSA 362-A:9(2). So the position of the House was to make the change that allowed these municipal hosts to be part of a community aggregation. At the time that the House made that decision, which I believe passed on the consent calendar, unanimously out of committee and then on the consent calendar in the House, at the time of that passage, the facts on the ground seemed to indicate that this was a non-controversial item. Subsequently, by the time the bill got to the Senate, numerous objections had been raised and concerns concerning some possible unintended consequences. And I paid close attention, as did many of the members of this committee, our committee, Science, Technology, and Energy, to the debate in the Senate. And many of those concerns seemed legitimate. So we're here this morning to discuss what should be the path forward. And I would like to recognize my House colleagues to discuss what they think we should do for this bill. So I'll turn first to Representative Corman, who is the prime sponsor of this legislation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I introduced this bill at the request of the Community Power Coalition. And as Chairman Vose said, it passed ST&E in the House unanimously, passed on consent, and then went to the Senate where Energy and Natural Resources heard the bill. When Department of Energy testified on the bill at ST&E and at ENR, they testified that they were neutral. And then shortly before the bill was exec in ENR, we received a letter from Tom Franz and Chris Elms with their concerns about the bill. And these concerns, actually, Chairman Vose listed in his floor speech last week in the House when we discussed this bill. The Community Power Coalition, in fact, the chair, Clifton Belo, who's sitting in the back, did send Tom Franz a response to the points that he raised, and Mr. Belo responded in detail to each one of the concerns raised by the Department of Energy. So I understand that this part of the bill, the first part of the bill, is in jeopardy, but my own feeling is that these concerns actually have already been answered, and we should go forward with the House version of the bill. A couple of things I want to say. One is that when the bill was introduced to Senate ENR, Mr. Belo also included or suggested an amendment with a minor language change that addressed a concern that DOE had expressed at that point. And that particular amendment did not make it through. And the second thing I want to say is that the Senate amendment, which creates a study committee, I would not favor that at all. And the reason is that I don't think we need one. And by the time it actually would be formed and operating, it would be very late in the cycle with a report due on November 1st. I could see this committee not even getting formed until September, and that just doesn't give much time. And there actually is one other thing I want to say, which is Section 2 of the House bill. No matter what we do, we should at least get Section 2 approved, because that's just a simple housekeeping change that I don't think there's any objection to. So those are the points I want to make. Thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Chairman.
Representative McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I would like to say is I would like to take us back to those happy days when the House was in agreement that this was a good bill to pass, and basically talk about the reason for Section 1 of the bill. We enabled competition in the market with HB 315, and when I saw this bill, and I was a co-sponsor on it, when I saw the language in this bill, basically it also is housekeeping. It's trying to make sure that the Community Power Coalition is able to partner with municipal hosts, and that those definitions are clarified in the language of the RSA. And I think all of us on House Science, Technology, and Energy agreed that that was language that should be there to enable those partnerships, which I don't know about the rest of you, but when we passed 315, that is what I imagined Community Power would be going out and doing, helping to leverage those local community projects in order to bring people's costs down by accessing power near where they're using it. So I looked at this as a follow-on step that made a lot of sense. And when I heard that there was a letter saying, don't do anything with this bill, I went to sort of see what the concerns from DOE were, and I know we have someone from DOE here today that will maybe answer questions if we have any. And I read the letter, and what I saw was, I don't want to call it a smokescreen, but what I saw was a letter that was alleging that there were a lot of things that were unknown. Many of those unknowns that they alluded to were covered by the inception of the Community Power Coalition with 315 and are already in statute in many places. The one thing that I saw that was pointed to that is an open question is sort of what's happening on some existing PUC dockets. But when those dockets are resolved, they will be taking into consideration the fact that Community Power is operating in the environment that we have today for power suppliers. So I think that the original purpose of the bill has not changed, and that the delay is unnecessary without some objection that actually can be quantified, because it does feel like it's sort of being derailed. The other argument that I think was thrown out was a concern for cost shifting. And in speaking with the folks at Community Power, what is in this bill says that any financial transactions that happen between the municipal host and Community Power are between those parties. It has nothing to do with the default provider. So ratepayers of the utilities would not be affected in any way by any of these private contracts. So I'm trying to figure out what it is we're trying to stop by changing our position on the original bill that sailed through the House because it was a good bit of legislation.
I know you said you didn't want to accuse this bill of being a smokescreen, but you did, which is probably not appropriate. So let's try to keep that in mind as we make comments going forward. It's not appropriate to malign the motivation or the intentions of a State Department. Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, first of all, I agree that the Section 2 technical housekeeping is, something that normally happens in a bill when we find that just for technical reasons we have to make a housekeeping change. I don't have any problem with that. But as in sometimes, in the fury of having public hearings in the House, bills get passed, and then because we think it's a good bill, but then sometimes as time goes by, and you hear other arguments coming from the other side of the curtain, you start to wonder, gee, maybe there was something we didn't quite understand. And so I'm beginning to think that, in this particular case, the wisdom of of our friends on the other side to maybe step back and have a study committee just might be in order for something complicated as what's going on here. So I would be more inclined to agree with the chair that perhaps this might be the better course of action in this particular case, because sometimes we think something is really good, and then maybe after a while we discover, well, we hadn't thought about something, and perhaps we need to step back. So I'd be more inclined to look at the other side.
As a press release from the governor's office a week or so ago pointed out, New Hampshire has done a very good job of managing what some people refer to as a transition in the energy economy. And we've done that by paying close attention to what things cost and what the unintended consequences of policies might be. The result of all that is that energy costs have been rising in New Hampshire much more slowly than they have been rising in the 5 other New England states. And the difference is the direct result of the policy decisions that state lawmakers have made. So I know the governor's office and the Department of Energy want to take a very careful and balanced approach to how we implement policies to encourage so-called green energy, with an eye toward protecting the people who have to pay for this. And that's all of us, essentially. So initially, that's why I thought maybe a study committee might be appropriate to try to ferret out whether this proposed legislative change would cost people money, probably not utility ratepayers, but maybe Community Power Coalition ratepayers. And to be forthcoming, I am chair of the Epping Energy Aggregation Committee, and the town of Epping is a Community Power Coalition member and will launch our own Community Power program on October 1st of this year. So that's my full disclosure with regard to community power. So I was initially persuaded that a study committee might be a worthwhile project. But then I received email from the Director of Regulatory and Legislative Affairs at the Community Power Coalition, who said that, and this is a quote from the email, "We request that there not be a study committee included in such an agreement," unquote. And as Representative Corman has already indicated, the chance of this study committee producing a significant outcome seem to be slim, given the fact that this is the second year of a biennium. In the fall, people are going to be distracted by their own campaigns for reelection if they are mounting such a campaign. So I now feel that a study committee might not be the best way to go for this particular bill. I do think it's important to save the technical correction that's in section 2 of the bill. But beyond that, I think there's not much else we can do this biennium. And we have to hope that we can work harder next year to come up with a strategy to fulfill the requirements of this proposal. So the Senate, Representative Waters, you have something to add to our conversation.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And I just want to start out by saying how much it's appreciated all the House has done on community power, and the Vesuvius of ideas sitting in the back there around this that we will have lots of chance to discuss in the future. So I do think that the chairman suggested it's good to get section 2 done, a technical fix, and if that's what we do to save the bill, maybe that's a good way to go. Is that fair enough, Mr. Chairman? Yeah. So I think that that's what we could agree on is to an amended version of just section 2.
Okay. Representative McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since we have folks here in the audience who've come to the hearing, I'd like to take us just briefly to what we're actually discussing for those that are watching at home. The language that we're discussing not implementing that sailed through the House is when a municipal host, as defined in RSA 362, consents to use its generation to offset the group load of a municipal or county aggregation and not one or more individual retail customer accounts, then it shall be a customer of a municipal or county aggregation and not on utility default service, with compensation for their output made pursuant to RSA 362. So what we're saying is we can't agree that a group that we empowered in order to provide competition in the energy market that pretty much all of our towns are currently engaging with, that we can't allow them to enter into this type of relationship because we're not sure how it will turn out, when that is exactly what we asked them to do when we decided to put them into business in the state. I feel like it's a one step forward, two steps back, what we're doing to them, because they've got municipal hosts lined up that they're looking to work with. And that has everything to do with whether or not they can bring down costs, right? They're not magicians. They're asking us to enable partnerships that should have been defined when we passed 315, but we didn't think of them. We didn't think to include that language. So that's why I said I thought section 1 was also a housekeeping item. And I still haven't heard, maybe we should hear from DOE, what objections or cost concerns could get in the way of us being able to pass this now rather than delaying. I know there's been a lot of conversation about the easiest thing to do is just pass section 2 and be done with it. But I came here today hoping that we would have a more fulsome conversation about the goal of this bill. Because again, it's a one step forward, two steps back for a business, a nonprofit that's trying to create competition in our energy market to lower costs. That's what we asked them to do. That's what we celebrated when we passed 315. And now they're coming back to us saying, this type of a relationship is something that we should be enabled to do, and it should be in statute so that it's clear how that works. And we're saying this clear language, this simple language about this relationship, we can't figure it out. And I just fundamentally disagree with that. I think it is as simple as it looks. So I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay, further comment, Representative Corbin.
Thank you. To what Representative McGee just said, I would add one other thing, which is one of the objections that DOE raised was what happens when there are multiple utilities involved. And the amendment that Mr. Belo suggested to the Senate ENR committee actually took care of that and said that all the customers comprising the load being offset are you located in the same utility service territory. So that particular objection could have been answered had the Senate considered that particular amendment.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments from anyone? All right, I'm going to call a 5-minute recess and ask House conferees to join me in that little room right over there. We'll be back in 5 minutes. we are going to resume the committee of conference on House Bill 1600. And I am going to move that this committee of conference adopt an amendment to the entire bill that preserves the content of Section 2 of the original House bill and Section 3, the effective date of the original House bill. That amendment would, of course, renumber these two sections to 1 and 2. Do I have a second to that motion? Seconded by Senator Waters. Any,
If I may,
Senator Pura.
I believe procedurally, you have to vote on it, and then we have to vote on it separately. So I think your second would have to come from the House side.
Okay, sorry about that. So do I have a second from a member of the House? Representative Thomas seconds my motion. So just us 4 House members have to vote on this. So can I have a call of the roll? Can you do that, Representative Thomas?
Representative Corman,
Yes.
Representative McGee,
Yes.
Representative Thomas, yes. Representative Bose?
Yes. Now the Senate.
All in favor?
Aye.
No roll call from you guys, huh? Okay. All right, so we're all agreed that we will preserve sections 2 and 3 of the House passed version of this bill and renumber them 1 and 2. And we're done, and I thank you all for your participation in this committee of conference. Thank you. Take care.